maybe I should ask for a straw poll, but I'm sure I'm not the only person who spends a lot of time in life feeling tired. Now, I don't mean by that I just need more sleep. What I mean by that is that life is relentless. Life just goes from one thing to the next, doesn't it? Does anyone else feel that way? Yeah, a few of you will admit it at least. You can ask yourself, right, when life is going on, where do you look for sort of hope in the midst of all those things that are just coming at you? So maybe when you're confronted with the kind of unknown in the future, that you go, this could turn my life or someone I care about, their life upside down in a moment. Where's the hope? Or what about when there's that sort of fractious way people in society deal with it, all the politics and the ethical issues and all the big things that are going on? You know, where do we think the solution is, and where is hope? Or maybe even just in the normal stuff of life, you know, if you're going through a period with a bit of money worries or health issues, or maybe even it's that awful little moment where things are going really well, and in the back of your head you've got the constant nagging feeling that this can't last, right? Something is going to go wrong any moment now. In all of these things and more, we're all sort of looking for something to try and navigate it, right? Something to give us hope, something that can just calm us down and we feel like, yes, we're secured. Now, there's lots of places we might look. Maybe for some of us it's working hard. And if I can just work hard, build up enough money, then I can retire with a big enough house, a roof over the head. I always at least know where my next meal is coming from. Then I can relax. Then I'll be secure. Or maybe for others of us, it's our relationships. We don't expect that life won't often throw up hard things, but at least if I can find the right person, we can navigate life together. I won't have to do this alone. Maybe it's for others activities, you know, particularly things like paid work or volunteer work and things where we feel like, you know, when I get to the end of my life, someone will be able to stand up and say, this person made a difference. And we find some sort of rest, some sort of satisfaction in feeling like we're doing that along the way. Of course, one way we might look, and we can get this right or wrong really, is for spiritual experiences. You know, you come into a big building like this with beautiful architecture and you sing and you pray and it gives you that shot in the arm and you feel like, yes, now I can face the week. There's lots of places we look, isn't there? But life is relentless. Life just keeps coming at us and we're trying to navigate it. We're looking for something. And as we think about that, one of the great books in English literature was a book called The Pilgrim's Progress. It's about a fella, a rather unimaginatively named person by the name of Christian, who is trying to navigate the world. And it begins with him, this big burden on his back, crushing him, this burden that's weighing him down that nearly sees the death of him at a few different points early on. And maybe that's how we feel sometimes, you know, constantly weighed down. Even when things are going well around us, there's always something that's just sort of not right, that's weighing us down. We feel burdened and we just love rest from it. Well, if that's how we feel, I hope we can see today that the invitation Jesus is making, come to me, all who labour and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. It's a really wonderful promise. I hope we can see the goodness of it today. So what is it then that Jesus is calling us to? And actually what Jesus is offering is a relationship with him, to come and relate to him, to experience him, to, as the psalm put it that we read, taste and see that the Lord is good. Now, I think this is important because often you talk to people, and I talk to people at least, it seems that in most people's minds, Christianity is really sort of a moral code. This is this thing, if you follow it, it'll make you into the good person. And if I can just be good enough, I might be acceptable to God. Which, as we said a moment ago, this is how we approach all of life. So it's the most natural thing in the world to think, right? Because if I want to get good at my job, I work hard, I'll advance. If I want to learn a skill, I practice, I work hard at it, and maybe eventually I'll be able to do it. And we also think if I just do enough God stuff, I'll become acceptable to him, right? I'll twist his arm and God will be happy. And yet Jesus never makes that invitation, does he? Really interestingly, he's sitting there and he says simply, come to me. Come to me. That's his invite. And now this is in the context, can I say, where everyone is coming at Jesus for every reason except to submit to him as Lord. Instead of, as he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. They're coming at him for everything except that. So if you read all of chapter 11, it's this interesting moment where he's among the crowds. There's questions over John the Baptist who came before Jesus to prepare for him. And is he really, is this really kind of God's forerunner? People are questioning that. And, well, you heard it. Jesus denounces these towns. Why? Because they want to come to him and be fed. He's feeding people, to heal, to do all the miracles, drive out the demons and all these things that are going on. But again, they wouldn't treat Jesus as more than just a miracle worker, more than just the one who could scratch an itch in this world here and now, a very immediate thing. And Jesus actually, he looks at them and he thinks, just compassionately, come to me, he says. Come and I'll give you rest. He holds out to these people more than what they realised that they needed. Now, of those words, I think, though, they're a linchpin, this come to me promise, because after talking about these people who are coming at Jesus, but not necessarily sort of wanting him for who he really is, if you read into chapter 12, you find the Pharisees. And the Pharisees are a bit different. They come at him because it's a Sabbath day and Jesus and his disciples are walking through a grain field, picking a bit of food and eating it. And they say, how dare you work on the Sabbath? This was a day God commanded you to rest. And it's this amazing moment. You go, well, he's hardly breaking the Sabbath, right? He's hardly doing something which is dishonouring God. And yet they had so turned even this gift of God into a thing you do, a work, a thing to earn God's salvation, that they're reprimanding him for the simple act of taking a walk and picking something to eat. And so, they're doing everything but coming to find the rest that Christ offers. Indeed, when you read the gospel, Jesus never says, come and learn a moral code, come and master a philosophy or champion an ideal. Fundamentally, he says, just come to me, come and experience what I've won. That's the invitation. And read the Gospels. And one of the things I find really encouraging and interesting, but all kinds of people do come to Jesus. Incredibly compelling guy. But you have everyone from the Pharisees who are together, who are morally upright, who are sort of the big important people in that society, through to people who are just normal people but have been crushed by life, sickness and disability, through to even some people who are deeply ingrained with sin. They all come at Jesus. So when he says, come to me all, he really means all. But equally, he really means burdened. Because when you read of these people that come at him, it's clear that burden becomes an important word. Those who come self-sufficient, I'm good enough, I've got it together, Jesus, do this thing for me, whatever it might be, they are the ones who are often sent away empty, discouraged. They get nothing from him. You might think of the rich young ruler if you're familiar with him. This man who comes to Jesus says, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says, well, you've got the commandments, don't murder, don't steal, honour your father and mother. And the rich young ruler says, well, I've kept all of them, I've done them, and I trust that he means it. And Jesus then pinpoints the one thing, actually in his case, the wealth. And he can't part with his wealth. That is the one thing keeping him truly devoted to God, and so he lives dejected. And you might contrast that with, say, John 4, and you've got the woman at the well, who in that society, not only being the woman, not a high standing at that point, but also a Samaritan. The Samaritans, the Jews, didn't get along, so there's another barrier, and an adulterous relationship. Everything on a worldly sense is wrong, and yet, when she listens to Jesus, despite falling short, she's accepted. Now, I'm sure she's also changed. I'm sure that meeting Christ and taking him at his word changes the way she lived, but you can see that simply coming, despite all that is wrong, all that is broken in her life, she is accepted because she's willing to hear Jesus' invitation for what it is. And so the invitation for us is to be much more like the Samaritan woman than the rich young ruler. To be those who recognise our need for Christ and come to him. Whatever our age, whatever our stage in life, however educated we are, rich, poor, whatever, it doesn't matter. Actually, what matters, Christ simply says, come and I will give you rest. but come in weakness. We are those who are wearied and burdened. We have to admit that. I read one fellow who described Christ's invitation as a bit like a soup kitchen. You think of the soup kitchen will feed anybody, but you've got to be willing to walk in the door before you're going to get helped, right? You've got to come and admit, I actually need your help. And Christ is the same. The invitation is there for whoever would lay hold of it. But first, we need to actually come understanding our need. Not thinking, yeah, I'm pretty good, I've got life under control, got to be pretty happy, I'm good enough. No, coming and realising what we need is his rest. Now, we say this, but what is his rest? In an exhausting world, what is the rest that Christ offers? And I think the idea that's most helpful in understanding this is the idea of the yoke. So the yoke was a big wooden beam. You'd put it on your working animals so that you could guide them, right? Drive the bullocks or whatever, wherever they needed to go. And this is the image that Jesus is picking up on when he says, take my yoke upon you. I think we can say that in one level, all of us are yoked to something. And that is because all of us serve some master, whether that be God or something else. Right? That's true of all of us. And if you want to figure out who that master is, I guess the question is often, what takes up your time and your resources? That's always a good diagnostic question, you know. So like if the whole world stops because of work and nothing else gets a look in, you go, well, that's the master, right? Or if the extracurricular activity, the hobby, if everything stops and nothing else can trump it, there's the master. Whatever it is, look at the bank statement, look at the calendar. It's those things that we give our time and our energy and our resources most to. Is often a pretty good way of figuring out, this is what I'm living for. This is my great good. Now, we say that. If we're all serving a master, the question is this a good master or a bad master? And the truth is, as those who are made for God, we are created for him and we will remain restless until we rest in him. Well, if we serve anything other than God, it's going to actually be bad for us. So, for instance, Lamentations 1:14. The writer there describes, he says, my sins have been bound into a yoke by his hands. They were woven together. They've been hung on my neck, and the Lord has sapped my strength. Which is an amazing little way of putting it, right? Sin, whatever it was that he's imagining, it was a yoke. It was a thing that guided him. It was the thing that drove his life, and yet it's sapping him. It's the opposite of what Jesus promises, which is take my yoke upon you, which is light, and you will find rest for your souls. But the reality is that whether we recognise it or not, this is actually where the problem of restlessness comes back to, right? That we haven't treated God as God. That whether that's the sin we personally do or just the reality of a world that's caught up in it, it is this that actually sort of ruins life. And look, the reality is that when there's 8 billion people all living differently from how we were created to live, is it any surprise that the world becomes a mess? See, we sell ourselves daily into this slavery under the yoke of sin. And yet the invitation of Christ is to a better yoke, a yoke that frees us from sin and its consequences, that changes the way that we live, so that all those things that we can at times misuse or make too big can be brought under his lordship and can be good. And he does this, of course, by giving his life. You think of 2,000 years ago, that first Good Friday. There's a sense in which Jesus took a yoke upon himself, that big crossbeam, which was put on his shoulders and which he then carried to the place of execution. Now, he didn't go there for anything he'd done wrong, of course. He went there, in fact, for our sake, not his sin. No sin in him to hang on his neck, but our sin. And he bled and he died. Why? To free us. That we might be forgiven, that we might be restored to God. And because he did that, he now offers that we can take not our own yoke that is damaging, is destroying, but his yoke, which is easy and light. To be led by him. To know that even if this world's hard, we face it with Christ. Eternity is secured. His good and guiding hand is upon us. All we need to do is simply come to him. Now that means a couple of things, I reckon. It means, first of all, not imagining we're self-sufficient, not imagining we can do it all for ourselves. The reality is that in an exhausting world, we don't necessarily have it in us to navigate all these things. But Christ offers us hope if we would simply come to him. So we need to get rid of the act of self-sufficiency. But secondly, and sort of flowing from that, it means we can do it without minimising the problem, the reality of our burdens. Because too often, there are things in our lives that the Bible would say is sin, that we can treat them like they don't matter before God. Like, I can hold on to this thing. And we doggedly hold on to the things that actually we should be getting rid of. And we don't then find the promise that Jesus is offering. We need to be clear. It can't be to God, have 90% of my life, but let me just hold on to these couple of things that I actually don't think are that burdensome or that problematic. I like them. The reality is God, the promise of Jesus is that he will either lift all of our burdens or none of them. And so we need to come wholeheartedly. And as we do this, we will taste and see that the Lord is good. We will taste and see that he has something far better, that he will change all those areas of our lives. Slowly, we'll stumble, we'll struggle, but he will release us from those burdens and we will have rest. And so the Pilgrim's Progress, that book, Christian begins with a heavy burden. But if you've read it, it doesn't take long into the book before he comes upon the cross. And there's a wonderful, wonderful sort of poetic way of describing what happens. And this is how he goes on at this point. John Bunyan, who wrote it, says, "Now I saw in my dream that the highway up which Christian was to go was fenced on either side with a wall, and that wall was called salvation. Up this way, therefore, did burdened Christian run, but not without great difficulty because of the load on his back. He ran till he came to the place somewhat ascending, and upon that place stood a cross, and a little below in the bottom a sepulchre. So I saw in my dream that just as Christian came up to the cross, his burden was loosed from his shoulders, and it fell from his back and began to tumble, and so continued to do so till it came to the mouth of the sepulchre, wherein it fell, and I saw it no more. Then was Christian glad and lightsome, and said, with a merry heart, he hath given me rest by his sorrows, and life by his death." It's such a wonderful picture of what the cross does. Christ removes our burden of sin once for all, totally gone, as if dead. So do you feel burdened in the world? I think lots of us do. Look to Jesus. Come and taste that the Lord is good. Come to him, weary and burdened. Submit to him and find the rest of him whose yoke is easy and whose burden is light. At this point, we're going to stand and we're going to sing again, In Christ Alone.